Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the Desi Sportscast. And it's the Kabaddi Show today. Yes, after missing a season of our favorite traditional sport that's been made into an international phenomenon that's even featured on Netflix, it's really good to be talking about Kabaddi. And just for those new listeners and viewers to Desi Sportscast, I just want to give you a brief overview of where I came from on terms of Kabaddi. I mean, I saw how the Pro Kabaddi League was taking off when I started the show 2, 3 years ago, probably now. And I got really interested in seeing how this league was progressing and developing, and wanted to cover it. And I was so lucky that I found my co-host that now become my co-host, because he gave me such an insight and so much knowledge and got me really into Kabaddi. I think I joined season 7, and I was really looking forward to season 8 after all the knowledge and information and entertainment he gave me in covering that. I really became a big fan, and obviously it helps that there's a team from Gujarat that kept my interest as well. But that man was the one and only Prasen, it's so good to have you back talking about Kabaddi, because it's down to you, my friend, that I'm into this sport and was so looking forward to season 8, but we've had to wait an extra year, so the build-up is even more. But you really got me started in this sport, and I can't thank you enough, because I've loved every second of season 7. I've followed the documentaries on Netflix. How have you missed Pro Kabaddi League in the season? Well, it was meant to be 2020, was meant to be season 8. How long's this 2 year? How has it been for you?
Well, first of all, Bharat, great to be back here. I still remember our first conversation. The first time we spoke, it was over WhatsApp. You asked if you could call. I was like, yes, please. And then we just spoke and spoke. It wasn't even the show. It was just the first conversation we were having about Kabaddi. And from there, to have grown in this journey, in the show, I think I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. So, yeah, it's been a very tough year, honestly, without Kabaddi, because that's something that, I followed very passionately over the last few years. Of course, the Kabaddi auction that happened was something that was very exciting. I woke up as early as 5 a.m. Couldn't wait, even though the auction was at 6:30 in the evening. I was on my toes. I was just like jumping around, like a young kid on the first day of school. It was all a great time, and obviously PK is returning and can't be more excited. But yeah,
Well,
it was a great auction as well.
the passion and enthusiasm for your sport is what got me into it. Because when I started, I mean, that was just a podcast we did back then. And I remember the phone conversations, and but it came through over the phone of how much you are into this sport, and really, that's the reason I've got into it as well. Because you made it so interesting, and with your knowledge and insight, it helped me a lot as well. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to the podcast at that time will have picked up and started following Kabaddi down to you solely. So I can't thank you enough as well for getting me into it. And our friendship has developed since then. So for
Absolutely.
all the listeners and viewers, that's how far back we go. And but it's all down to this man. How much? I know you said you woke up early, looking forward to this auction. How was the build up in India? I mean, we've had this what 2 year break now. How was the build up in India? How much were people looking forward to this? Because it's become a really major sport now, hasn't it, in India over 6, 7 years?
Yeah, I think the sport has certainly grown leaps and bounds from where it started off in 2014. Since then, a lot of names have become household names, really. If you go to nooks and corners of the country, you will hear names like Pardeep Narwal, Rahul Chaudhary, Ajay Thakur. And that's what sort of Kabaddi has brought to the Indian sports sphere, which has sort of gotten all these names. Gotten the game actually a lot more popular than from just being on the mud to getting onto the mat as well. So I think the build-up was fairly good because there were so many names involved in the auction. Names which I just mentioned. You wouldn't expect the teams to release them because they've been proven performers. But this auction really, for the first ever time, Pardeep was in the auction and he wasn't retained by the Pirates. That by itself became like a huge bit of news. There was some, like I said, Ajay Thakur, Rohit Kumar, Monu Goyat. So many big names were released by the teams, and honestly, it was surprising that these many names were released, but you can expect that because it's been a 2 year period. There have been new names that have come out from the senior nationals and from the domestic tournaments that have happened in Kabaddi. So, overall, I think the build up was fairly good. Everyone was looking, especially at where Pardeep Narwal would go. And the hype didn't, I mean, obviously, the way he was sold to the UP Yoddha certainly lived up to all that hype.
Now, just like the first time, there'll be a lot of listeners, especially outside India, not in India. I know in India, everybody will know about Kabaddi and how it works and the Pro Kabaddi League as well. But in terms of the players, because of that missed or postponed season 8 from 2020 to now, have there been? Do they play for organisations or state teams? Have there been tournaments during that time? I know the restrictions were lifted at the start of the year in terms of team sports and things like that. So have they been busy, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, I think since last March, it's obviously been hard. I've actually been in touch with a couple of players who I've known, who have built relationships with over the course of the PKL. And they've told me that obviously they haven't had a chance to participate in tournaments simply because of the COVID restrictions, of the whole country going on lockdown and in quarantine and things like that. But off late, over the past 3-4 months, tournaments have opened up. We also had the senior nationals that happened. We had the K7 Kabaddi tournament that happened. So a couple of tournaments did start opening up before the PKL auction happened, which sort of managed to unearth some new talents. We saw the names of like Govind Gurjar, and we saw so many young players actually being bought in the auctions, the likes of Rinku as well. So overall, I think the Kabaddi was certainly hit. I have a feeling. I mean, I'd like to say that probably Kabaddi was the most hit sport, simply because of it being a contact sport. It was announced that it would probably take this next season PKL 8 would happen in 2020 March, April, and then the pandemic happened. So then it had to be delayed by like 2 years. So, but now we're finally back, and I'm sure the players can't wait to get started.
And again, just to give an overview of how the auction operates. So each of the teams were able to retain a maximum of 6 players. Is that right? Or
Yeah.
from their season 7 squads. And then they had 4.4 crores to spend in this auction, and they can build up a squad using that money of 18 to 25 players with a maximum of 4 foreigners. I think that's pretty much the overview of the auction, wasn't
Yeah.
it? So let's just talk about the release players, because like you said earlier, a lot of names caught, big names were released by some of the teams, and you mentioned Pradeep, even Siddharth. What were your reactions to when you saw that list? Because you said there were a lot of big names that were released, and what not only your reaction, but what were your thoughts behind the team's thinking as to why they would release such big names?
I think what happened in the last and the auction before that was that these players were obviously bought at a very, very high price. Someone like, Monu Goyat, for example, was bought for 1.51 crore. Pradeep Narwal has been retained for the last, 4 seasons that he's played with the Patna Pirates. And obviously, Siddharth Desai also came at a very, very high price tag for the Telugu Titans. The Tamil Talaivas opted to release all their players because they obviously had a horrific season. Gujarat Giants, I mean, again, they didn't have too many star players in that side. It was more of a young squad that they had. They opted to release Sachin Tanwar, and unfortunately couldn't get him back. Bengaluru Bulls also obviously retained Pawan Serawat. There was never going to be a doubt of that. But they released Rohit Kumar and a fair few other players and opted to retain a young coach. So I think that the teams were looking to sort of release their players only because they wanted to free up their purse. I even, did speak to BC Ramesh, who's the coach of the Bengal Warriors, and he was saying the same thing, that he wasn't looking to retain too many big players, the likes of Rinku Narwal. Obviously, I mean, he did retain a very, very good core of players in Maninder, Mohammad Nabi Baksh. So, just to give the listeners a little idea, when we're saying things like they release Pardeep Narwal, they release Siddharth Desai, it's probably equivalent to RCB releasing Virat Kohli or CSK releasing MS Dhoni. So these are big, big names who have sort of, really helped develop the sport of Kabaddi and in specific the PKL. So I was honestly surprised, but in terms of a team perspective, I think it was simply to free up that purse and see if they could get back these players cheaper or through the FBM card, which was the final bid match card that they had.
And that is a big risk in terms of using that final bid. Do you want to just explain that, how that worked? Because there were restrictions in terms of that as well, wasn't there?
Yeah. So every team had two FBM cards to sort of
Final
use.
bid match.
Yeah, final bid match cards that they could use. So if we were to take a cricket equivalent, it's something related to the RTM card that the IPL has, right to match. So basically, when a team, let's say, if Bharat was playing for the Gujarat Giants in the previous season, and
Oh, I would have been
the
retained.
Gujarat. Yeah, I mean, you'd be retained, but if they were thinking like the Patna Pirates to release Pardeep, you'd never know. So let's just say hypothetically, which would never
Oh,
happen,
it's
Bharat
definitely
was released by
hypothetical.
the yeah, Bharat was released by the Gujarat Giants, and the Bengaluru Bulls bought him for, let's say, 1 crore. The Gujarat Giants, they could use their FPM card and match that price of 1 crore and sign Bharat back for a price of 1 crore. So that's basically how the FPM card works.
And okay, so that's and we'll talk about that because there was one big player that was picked up on that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of the released, the Tamil Talibas released, like you said, the most. In a way, not surprising because how they finished season 7, but still a little bit surprising that they thought the squad there was a huge issue with the whole squad because normally when you're allowed to release players, you're going to be releasing the players that you think are not going to make the difference. They didn't have such a bad squad, did they? That they released so many players.
Well, I think to be very honest, they had an excellent squad, but the problem is the full squad was filled with veterans. If you look at it, they had Manji Chilla, they had Jasveer Singh, Ajay Thakur, Rahul Chaudhary. I mean, obviously big names in terms of the PKL, sphere of players. If you look at it, and I think the age-old saying of "too many cooks spoil the broth" sort of really hit them hard in the last season. They couldn't really operate as a unit, and I'm not at all surprised actually that they released all their players. I was actually expecting them to sort of get Ajay Thakur back using the FBM card, but eventually they didn't. And now it looks like the Dabang Delhi are the new Tamil Talaivas. They've got Ajay Thakur, they've got Manjeet Chillar, they've got Joginder Narwal, they've got Sandeep Narwal. And in that, there's a little Sam Curran in Naveen Kumar. So I'm very excited to see that Dabang squad. I just hope that Naveen isn't curbed of his naturally expressive rating because he's going to have to listen to a lot of people in that team. So, but yeah, Tamil Talevas, I'm not at all surprised that they released all those players. They had a terrible season, couldn't really gel as a unit at all. So they completely overhauled their side. And I think they did sign a couple of decent players, but I'm not sure they'll be completely happy after that auction.
And at the other end, I think it was Jaipur that retained the most number of players. Again, just playing devil's advocate with a 2-year gap. How do you know that because you've not seen them play, like you said, play the sport, and you're just going on their training or whatever, or what you've seen through video conferencing or whatever, because they wouldn't have been together as a group. I'm assuming. That's a lot of confidence paid in that squad, isn't it? To retain so many players with not having the full knowledge of where they are after this gap.
Well, the thing about the Jaipur Pink Panthers and to some extent even the Bengaluru Bulls and the UP Yoddha is that they opted to sort of retain a very young team. There wasn't a player in that side who was probably, I'd say, 25, 26 plus maybe, if I could probably go out on a limb and say that because I'm not sure of their ages. But the Jaipur Pink Panthers obviously picked proven performers. If you look at it, Amit Huda, one of the best right corner defenders in the country, they opted to retain Nitin Raval, who had his fair share of injury troubles, but was obviously a great raider. He was a great left corner defender as well. Amit Huda, right corner defender. So they opted to retain that the combination of Pavan TR as well, who's a great cover defender, Elavarasan as well. So a lot of these players did well for the Jaipur Pink Panthers, and that's why they opted to retain them. So I wasn't too surprised because obviously Kabaddi now is growing into a sport where you need fresh legs. Experience does matter, but I think youth over experience is something that we might see a lot in the Kabaddi sphere in the coming years.
And well, we're going to talk about the most expensive sold player ever. But first, you've got to explain to the fans of Patna why it was a good idea to release Pradeep.
Well, so there is a video on the Patna Pirates Twitter account if anyone's interested. There's actually a video of Ram Meher Singh explaining why he didn't want to release Pardeep Narwal, and instead Pardeep Pardeep Narwal actually asked for the team to release him into the auction. And obviously, that's a big statement coming from him because he wanted to see how much more he can earn. And quite obviously, the prices went over the roof, and he was bought for that ginormous sum of 1.6 plus. So obviously, Ram Meher Singh wasn't ideally looking to release Pardeep, but Pardeep asked for him to be released into the auction. And even after the auction, there's a video of Ram Meher Singh actually expressing sadness that he couldn't retain or rather use the FBM card to sign Pardeep because he went at such a high price. So unfortunate for Ram Meher really, and unfortunate for the Patna Pirates. It just seemed like Pardeep Narwal was bound to be with the Patna Pirates for like a very long time. But that's the nature of franchisee sport, I guess. You can't ever expect one player to stay with the same side unless it's probably cricket.
I did not. Well, this is why you're on the show as the expert. I did not know that Pradeep asked to go into the auction.
Yeah, he did. I wouldn't be surprised because he's obviously the league's best raider, first player to get to 1,000 points.
Well,
He scored three.
Why would Patna allow that? You've
I
just
mean, it's a player's
rattled off
choice
the
eventually.
stats.
It's a player's choice eventually. I mean, if he's going to go and tell the team, I want to be released, there's nothing much they can do about it. And they have to release him because, I'm not sure what goes on behind the scenes, but if a player wants to be released, I don't think a team can do much more than that. And obviously, Ram Meher Singh did say, Ram Meher Singh is the coach of the Patna Pirates. So he did mention that he was obviously, disappointed that Pardeep wanted to go into the auction in the first place. And those were clear signs that they were looking to sort of buy him back. But obviously, at the price of which the UP or the bottom at 1.65 crore, it was just going to be a little bit of a harakiri move from Patna, if I could put it that way, because until then, Pardeep's name came up, they didn't have too many big players, and there were also the BCD category players to come the next day. So obviously, they didn't raise their FPM card for him, and it's certainly a very big loss, no doubt.
And I don't know if this needs to be said, but do you want to tell the UP Yoda fans as to why you think he's worth 1.65 crore?
Well, like I said, if Kohli is the run machine, Pardeep is the raid machine. There's no doubt about it. One season he scored 360. I think it was 369 points, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 369. The second most raid points in a single match, 34 points. The first player to 1,000 plus points in his career. Three titles with the Patna Pirates in season 3, 4, and 5. Pardeep Narwal basically is like if there was ever a book of records for Kabaddi, I think Pardeep Narwal would probably feature in every single page multiple times. That's how good he is as a raider. And with the skill set that he has, the Dubki, he's known as the Dubki King because of the move that he does, sort of goes under the raider defenders and things like that. That's why Kabaddi is such a beautiful sport. You have so many variables. It's never a very, very easy thing to understand in terms of what's happening. But you just need to tag the defenders and go and cross the line. And Pardeep's done that way too many times in his life, and that's why he went for that high.
And UP Yoda, obviously, I think they were in the third or fourth position in season 7. Is this the player that's going to take him further? Because I think they got eliminated in the first stage. They did get into the elimination round, but then I think they lost to your boys. But is this the difference that's going to help them get to that next stage of maybe the semi-finals and final? Is he that sort of a impact buy?
Yeah, absolutely. To give you context of how much the UP wanted him, there was a stage at which Pardeep Narwal was at 1.6 crore with the UP literally, no one else wanted him. Everyone was like, "We're out. We can't afford."
I was going to come to that because I saw the auction, and I think the bid was at 1.55. Then UP went without anybody else bidding to 1.6. Again, without anybody bidding, they went for 1.65.
1.65.
Explain that. Why?
One, I think it's a PR move that they basically wanted the name UP Yoda to come out there. But look, that's what Pardeep Narwal does to you. You just want him. You're going to get him whatever it takes. They didn't want any opposition. They didn't want anyone to come in their way of signing Pardeep. And I wouldn't be surprised because they had a lot of money at that point in time. They didn't have too many raiders. Until then, they had just signed Mohammad Taghi from Iran, who's a raider. And they had retained Surender Gill among the retained players that they had, the 4 retained players in Nitesh, Sumit, Ashu Singh, and Surender Gill. So they needed that impact player because they already had their set defense in these 4 players. Nitesh Kumar, obviously, the first defender to 100 tackle points, and he even captained the side last season. So they had that defense unit sorted out, and they needed this one impact player. And that's obviously why they went for Pardeep Narwal, because he's had the biggest impact in the Pro Kabaddi League in the rating department. So I think it looks a very good squad. They even got back Shrikant Jadhav using the FBM card. So overall, I think the squad shaped really well for them post the auction. And I'm honestly excited to see how Pardeep does in that UP squad.
Were Jaipur seriously in that bid war with UP or over Pradeep? Because they kept mentioning on the channel that I was looking at, Abhishek was thinking seriously about whether to match or go above UP's bid. Were they seriously involved in that bidding war?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, because they certainly just retained only some young players, and that didn't like dent their purse as much as a few other teams didn't have money. And look, if there's one thing, I think one of the best owners of teams in sports is Abhishek Bachchan. He knows his kabaddi in and out. He's there for every single game, and you can see the passion that he sort of oozes into that side. There's even a documentary on called Sons of the Soil. Around the Jaipur Pink Panthers, and obviously there's a lot more drama there than what you would probably see during the whole season. But that's the passion that he brings to the kabaddi, front, and obviously he knows his players really well. Pardeep could have really helped that team sort of develop into a well-rounded side. And like I said, they had all the money that they needed, but eventually the UP or the outbid themselves and went for 1.65, and that's what an auction is all about.
I was wondering what's going on. Why they keep bidding against themselves? I couldn't understand it. But if it's a P exercise, I mean, he was already the most costliest player
Yeah,
in auction
yeah,
history, but they were
yeah.
kept on bidding 5 lakh more, 5 lakh more, whatever it was, and I just didn't understand why. But and yeah, I highly recommend that Sense of the Soil documentary. I think it's on Netflix or Amazon. It might be Amazon. I
Yeah,
loved it.
right.
I thought it was brilliant. I wish they'd do more of those inside, what we normally never see. But you can see that Abhishek hates losing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
you can see his involvement. He's one of those owners, not unlike other franchise sports where they're in the background, but he's really passionate about this sport and his team and wants them to do well.
That's the first thing that even comes in the documentary. I hate losing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's literally the first thing that comes up on
Yeah,
the documentary.
and I love that about owners who get so involved and so passionate. They're not there just for the PR exercise. So that was good to see, and it'll be good to follow Jaipur this season, having seen
Yeah.
that documentary as well. And also, it gave an insight into it's a very very demanding sport and a lot of pressure on these young men, to perform, and it's pretty much week in, week out, isn't it? And it's a full contact sport. Let's face it, and a mistimed tackle or something can take you out for the season. And
Yeah.
they play, but it's a brilliant documentary. I highly recommend it. The other player I wanted to ask you about, we talked about the final bid match, and it happened with Siddharth Desai. So if you're going to release such a star player, and then I know they spent 1.4 crore to buy him or something like that, huge amount,
Yeah.
but then you're going to pay similar amount in that final bit. I didn't understand why release him in the first place.
Well, I mean, I think given how okay, so Rahul Chaudhary had formed the team leading up to when Siddharth Desai joined them. Just before PKL 7, where PKL 6 he played for U Mumbai, and then he went and played for the Telugu Titans, and he really, really made his presence felt in that season. And like we discussed earlier in the show, that it was all about freeing up the purse, because obviously if you free up 1.45 crore from your purse of 4.4, that's you're already freeing up one fourth of your whole purse. And they were, I mean, to be very honest with you, I'm putting this out on record. I hadn't predicted anyone would go above 1 crore. I had thought Pardeep Narwal will obviously cross that barrier because of like the stature that he is, but I hadn't predicted anyone else to go above 1 crore. And Siddharth Desai's bid took me by surprise, simply because he's obviously young in the tournament. He has scored 220 points, but now a lot of players have started scoring 200 points. It's like how in ODI cricket, back in the day, A 300, 350 run target was a very, very rare thing. But now, literally, teams scored 400, 430 without breaking a sweat. So I was surprised. I think the Telugu Titans certainly were looking to get him back at a cheaper price. But given that they sort of had to given and use their FPM card to sign him back as their lead raider, they had to do it. So unfortunate for them that they didn't get too much of a profit on that. But he's obviously a class player, and I'm sure he'll make every penny worth over there.
Well, we mentioned the money that UP Yodha spent on Pradeep and Telugu Titans on retaining Siddharth. They could have done that
Yeah.
without spending the money, but you explained why. But the biggest spenders were Jaipur and Telugu, I believe, overspending close to the budget maximum. And Jaipur also retained the most number of players. So
Yeah.
could you explain how that came about, and what do you think of the money that both those teams spent?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, it's really down to how you want to form a team, and I think, like, with Abhishek Bachchan's involvement in the league, involvement in the team, there was always going to be a question of him also wanting a few players who he really likes to be in that side. They were looking to sign some really big names. Of course, they did get like quite a few names that they it really, it was a very, very big surprise for me that Arjun Deshwal went for that price of 96 lakh, on the third day. He obviously did really well for U Mumbai in the limited chances that he got. But they're putting their trust on Arjun Deshwal. Deepak Nivas Hooda going for that price of 55 lakh was a shocker for me. I think they really got a steal with Deepak Nivas Hooda, because him going for 55 lakh just made life easy for them. I think they could just exercise their FPM card to get him back. So I think overall, Jaipur really have a well built squad this season. Telugu Titans have been known to spend that amount of money, really, on Vishal Bharadwaj, Rahul Chaudhary, now Siddharth Desai, previous season as well on Siddharth Desai. So I wouldn't say they've overspent. I think they certainly had their budget caps in mind, and but that's what the auction does to you. Every single player, every single coach you ask after the auction how you feel, that they're going to say the same thing. They're going to say that's what the auction does to you. So I think that's what the auction did to them.
And the team that spent the least was Umumba.
Oh, don't get me started
Have
on that
they
team.
got such a brilliant squad? I think the most they spent was 30 lakhs or something like that. Any thoughts on? Go on, have your say on Umumba and the
I have a
auction.
lot of thoughts on the Uvumba. I mean, I'll say it. I don't even mind saying it. It's their worst squad in 8 seasons so far. It's easily the worst squad that they've assembled. Faisal Atrachali is there. He's obviously a great player. They retained Abhishek Singh, who was very good for them last season for a good sum of money. Okay. But who's the lead raider in that side? They don't have a lead raider. They're just going to keep banking on Abhishek Singh, because they were literally sleeping all the way until category B. And then category C came up. And suddenly they were all looking at these unsold players. They were trying to sign all unknown names. And it was a very, very surprising thing, because to be honest, I think they had the best chance of using the FPM card. They lost out on a lot of players. They couldn't. I don't even think that they have they don't have a perfect team, because they're again going to be depending on like a youngster like Rinku. He's not the Rinku Narwal who plays for the Bengal Warriors. This is a youngster, and they pay 32 lakh or something around that for Rinku. And now they've got just Fazal Atrachali from that retained unit. They've got Mohsen Maksudlu, but they don't really have any big names. And I think, I mean, to be very honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they finish bottom of the table this season.
Really, after getting to the
Yeah.
semi-finals in season
Yeah.
7.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they unfortunately don't have a good squad at all this time around. Uh, I mean, so they changed their whole support stuff. Basically, there was a defender, Rajguru, who is now the coach of the side, and I'm not sure what the internal communication was within the side, but it was just very, very lackadaisical the way they went in for their bids. It just seemed like they weren't interested to be in the auction, to be very honest. They
Well, you
didn't bid
can.
for any players. I mean, if you're seeing, the likes of Rishang Devadiga, Monu Goyat, both going for their base price. Someone like Vishal Mane unsold. I mean, I definitely think Umumba could have done way better than what they did.
And I mean, there must be a reason they went in with that strategy of, no big names coming in, retaining a lot of players, and banking on the young talent that they've got. Because it is a big team, isn't it? They've got a good record in
Yeah,
PKLM.
they've got a huge record. Obviously, given that they have won one title, you would expect Mumba to have a lot of fan following, and they certainly do. They have their own club as well, official club. And I mean, on social media, actually, right after the auction, a lot of people were slamming the Mumba management for failing to pick good players or rather recognize players. I mean, I think they did the opposite of what the Talaivas did last season. Last season, the Talaivas fully banked on experienced players and flopped. This season, Mumba will be entirely depending on youngsters. And I mean, as much as Kabaddi obviously requires fresh legs, you do need that bit of experience as well. And apart from Fazal Atrachali in that side, I don't see a lot of experience. And that's the reason why they're probably going to struggle a lot.
A couple of teams we need to mention, and I want your thoughts on how the auction went for them. Let's start with the home team, the Bulls. You released, I believe Rohit was your captain. Was he
Yeah.
the captain? And you released him, so that was a big statement. Obviously, you kept the main man, Sharawat. How do you think the auction went for your home team?
Yeah, one of the two obvious FBMs was going to be on Mahinder Singh, who was a fantastic cover defender for us last season. How much ever it was, I'm sure Coach Randir Sharawat wouldn't have given anything away and would have happily taken him back with FBM. Releasing Rohit Kumar, I think, was more of a obvious thing because last season he really struggled to get points. At one stage, he was even benched quite a bit, and Pawan Sarawat led that team. Uh, so I think that's what's going to happen in PK late as well. Pawan leading that team, and that's like a powerhouse of raiders. To be very honest, I think all good names in that raiding unit at one point were probably good raiders for their own sides. Chandran Ranjit came at a very high price. He was obviously instrumental in Dabang Delhi's push until the final. You've got Abul Fazol Maksudlu, who's a great Iranian, raider who played for the Gujarat Giants. You've got More GB. You've obviously got all these big names. Deepak Narwal as well. At once played for the Bengaluru Bulls before he moved on to the Patna Pirates. So you've got a fantastic raiding unit. But that said, I'm still a little skeptical about the defensive part of it because Amit Shioran and Saurabh Nandal were absolutely phenomenal last season. But like you mentioned during the show, Kabaddi, you just need one move to rule a player out of the entire competition. And I'm not sure the Bulls have the perfect replacements for these players because there's a lot of faith invested into Saurabh Nandal, who's the right corner, and Amit Shioran, who's the left corner. But apart from them, there aren't too many big names for them to be replaced. So on that front, I'm just a little worried.
They spent quite a big money on Mahinder as a defender.
Yeah, that wasn't going to be a surprise because I think, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure, but he was one of the most cost. I think he was the top. He was in the top three costliest defenders of last season, and obviously he did really well for us. He's a fantastic cover defender. There's no doubt about it. He has the body tackle. He has the back hold. He has everything it takes. And there was obviously going to be no way that Randir was going to let him go.
And you have to give me a bit of hope because no star names for my home state, the Giants, but they spent quite big money on Ravinder Pahal because defenders, let's face it, don't go for the biggest money. It's always the all-rounders and the Raiders. But he went for quite a bit of money in 74 lakhs, I believe, something like that. What did you think? How did the auction went for the Gujarat boys?
Yeah, I think Gujarat actually have a pretty solid team.
Young team.
They did. Sorry.
Young team?
Yeah, I mean, it is a young team because obviously the captain's very young. Sunil Kumar is obviously probably one of the youngest captains. He is the youngest captain in the league. I mean, him and Pawan Sarawat probably are, I mean, almost the same age, I guess. But I was not surprised to see that they got back a lot of their old players. Ajay Kumar, for example, he was brought back. They also got back Mahendra Ganesh Rajput, both good raiders. They also got Girish Ernak. He wasn't in the greatest of form for the Puneri Paltan last season. He was also sent home at one point in time because they wanted to give him rest and things like that. But in Girish Ernak, they've got a really dependable left corner with Sunil and Parvez Bensal to sort of take care of that cover defense. Along with them, they've also got Ravinder Pahel on that right corner, and he's going to be an absolute handful to deal with. So I think the defensive unit is very well structured. Whether the raiding unit takes care of itself is probably going to be a issue for them, because it's exactly the opposite of what the Bulls have. The Bulls have a so-so defense and a tremendous raiding unit. The Gujarat Giants have a tremendous defensive unit, but the rating is not so great. So I think they'll struggle in that department, but otherwise they have a fairly well-rounded squad.
And like I mentioned, the big money usually goes to raiders and all-rounders, but Tamil Talivas paid the most for a defender in
Yeah.
Surjit Singh.
Surjit,
Value
yeah.
for money?
Surjit is always value for money, actually, if I'm being very honest, because he's one of those defenders who really gives his heart into everything he does. He was obviously instrumental in the Bengal Warriors campaign as well. He was a very very vital player there. I was surprised they actually let him go, because he, if you're paying that much money for a for a defender, might as well keep him for longer. 75 lakhs, I think he was given. So it was 92 for Manjeet, 71 or 72 for Prapanjan, and 75 for Surjit. So, yeah, that's about how much, like, the three highest paid players. And then again, like last season, they had a lot of experience in that side. This season, they've banked on Surjit too. I think they'll definitely name him captain. Because a cover defender obviously is a very very good choice for captain. So Manjeet and Prapanjan, the combination is something that I'm really looking forward to, because they've I mean, Manjeet is obviously young. He did really well in the chances that he got last season. So that investment on Surjit Singh is more for the captaincy material and the calmness he brings in that defensive part of Kabaddi.
And we've got to mention a whole host of foreign players came into the league, and that's one thing I like about the Pro Kabaddi League is the amount of foreign players that are really good, that are showcasing their talent as well. And the biggest one that went this time was, if I'm reading it right, for Iranian Chinaya.
Yeah.
What do you know about this player? Is he somebody that you've come across before?
Yeah, so he has played fair few games for Iran. I haven't seen much of him, if I'm being honest. Haven't seen him play too much, so it did come as a surprise to me as well. But he's regarded as one of the best, players in that Iranian side. And if that's coming from someone like, Fazal Atrachali, Abozar Migani, Mohammad Maqsoodlu, Mohsen Maqsoodlu, all of them, praising, and even social media, I think, was very happy with Chennai getting that contract. So excited to see what he brings to the table, because the last time the Bengal Warriors signed Mohammad Nabi Baksh, we weren't sure what to expect, and that man absolutely exploded on the mat. So that's what the Iranians are really known for. I mean, at least in Indian players, you'd see raiders just raiding. You wouldn't see a Pardeep Narwal going for tackles. You wouldn't see like a Mahendra Singh going for raiding, but Iranians do everything. It's like they just want to be in the act,
All
and
rounders,
that's
proper
the
all
best part about
rounders.
Iranians. So
But
they're all rounders.
it's also amazing because I believe we've got Koreans, we've got Bangladeshis,
Yeah, we've got a Japanese as well.
a Japanese.
Yeah,
Which team was picked up by
Abe.
Japan?
Yeah, his name's Abe. I think he was picked up by the Telugu Titans. To be very honest, I think it's gonna be a very very hard season, because all players have like absolutely changed teams, and one player's here, one player's there. So by the time we figure out who's playing for who, it'll probably take like 3-4 matches. But yeah, so Abe Setsuro, I think was his name. He was signed by the Telugu Titans.
And in terms of the auction, I think just under 50 crore was spent by all the teams. Who had the best auction in your opinion? I think I know who had the worst auction. You've already probably mentioned
Yeah.
them, but who had the best auction?
I think the Puneri Paltan certainly had the best auction. They've got a phenomenal squad. Absolutely no doubt about it. I think they're the strongest squad on paper. They've got Rahul Chaudhary. They got back Nitin Tomar. They've got Baldev Singh on the right corner. They've got Vishal Bharadwaj on the left corner. They've also got young legs in Victor Obiero. They've got Govind Gurjar. Like I said, he was one of the most impressive defenders in the domestic tournament. They've retained a host of players. They retained Bala Sahib Jadhav, Pavan Kadian. They retained Sanket Sawant. So overall, it's looking a phenomenal side. I think their bench strength is also excellent, which is very very important PKL. So Puneri Paltan look really primed actually to win their first PKL title, and that too under Anup Kumar will be something special.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying you think Mumbai had the worst auction.
Yeah, yeah.
You've already mentioned that, so we won't go into that. I think that was a given after what you said earlier. But we have to talk about the reigning champions, but because they didn't spend a lot of money either.
I spoke to BC Ramesh, and so he actually, it's very interesting how auction dynamics work. He had specific amounts of money for each and every player. It was like even if they go like zero point 0.5 lakh above this, I'm not going to buy. He was obviously looking to sign back some of his players like Jiva Kumar, Rinku Narwal, who have been proven performers. But I mean, I asked them why the Bengal Warriors were sleeping right through Category A. They sort of came back to life later on during Category B and Category C. And he said, so I even asked him why they signed Abozar Bigani, who's turned out to be one of the better right corner defenders in the league. And he said he didn't want to take chances, of losing other players because obviously names like Baldev Singh, Jiva Kumar, they've all become household names in the league, and he didn't want to take a chance and spend too much money on them. So he's got a couple of. I mean, the Bengal Warriors have got a couple of good players in that side. They obviously got back Sukesh Hegde using the FBM card. His trusted lieutenant, BC Ramesh loves his Kannada players. He's got Sachin Vitla for the left corner. They also got back, like I said, Abozar Migani. They got back Sumit Singh. I can't remember too many others. Like I said, it's probably gonna take some time to figure out which player joined. They got Rishank Devadi at base price. That was something that was absolutely shocking to me. And I did ask him as well. What was the strategy behind getting Rishank at base price? And he said, well, there was no strategy. No one bid for him. He went unsold twice. We called him back. We were like, okay, let's probably try our luck. We'll give it a bid, maybe two, maybe three. If it goes more than 25, we're not going to want him. And they raised the paddle for 20, and he was sold for base price. And so, I mean, the quality of a player like Rishank Devadiga cannot be understated. So I definitely think they've got a steal in him. And I really hope he stays injury free, because if he forms that partnership with Maninder Singh and Sukesh Hegde, it's going to be something to watch out for.
Well, we'll see if Bengal, after the maiden title, can retain it and not having spent huge amounts. But there is one player that I highlighted and I wanted to speak to you about is Rahul Gulia, the young player that kept being mentioned, that he was an uncapped player. He's a first timer in the league. Why so much money for him?
It's surprising to all of us, honestly. None of us could really make sense of that, because I mean he's listed as an all-rounder, but to be very honest, he isn't the most attacking defender, if I can put it that way. He is certainly capable of pulling off, those tackles, those ankle holds, but he isn't really an out-and-out all-rounder. Like you probably want to equate him with the likes of, let's say, Deepak Nivas Hooda, who consistently puts in those tackles, consistently puts out those ankle holds, and even off late, Rahul Chaudhary started to do that. So I think they're looking at a very aggressive type of raider in Rohit Gulia more than anything, and that's why he's been paid that sort of money. 83 lakhs from the Haryana Steelers is a lot of money. They were obviously looking to get someone to complement Vikas Kandola in their side, and they've got their man. But is he even dependable on the defensive front? Is something that I'm a little skeptical about.
Well, he comes from the state that's often associated with the sport, Haryana, so they must know a little
Yeah.
bit about the talent that the young man probably possesses. So we'll see how he goes on, but a lot of pressure on him already with that sort of price tag. The problem for me now is that we had a blockbuster auction. There was, a lot of surprises, a lot of big names that were involved in it because of the release list. How are we going to get through the next 2 months waiting for the tournament to start?
I can't. I can't do it.
because I am so looking forward to it. I want it to start next week. I know it's not possible, but this is how much my excitement is at the moment, and I'm genuine about this because I'll be able to watch the matches as well. And 2 months is too long.
I mean, well, it certainly is too long, but at this stage, I'll take what I'm given because it's taken 1.5 years, for the Pro Kabaddi League to happen. It's finally here. The auction took place. They're saying that the season is going to start in December, and I'll take it. Even if it starts on December 31st, I will take it because Kabaddi is coming back. I don't want them to say that, listen, oh, okay, COVID's back and we're going to push it by 5 more months and that wait continues until next year and
Oh,
all of that. So,
let's hope that's not the case. Let's
yeah.
hope fans are somehow allowed in because I think they may play a huge part. We know that in every sport. But I'm assuming that they're still planning to do the same sort of rotation in different stadiums where they'll play 4 or 5 matches. That is same format.
I think the recent report that we saw says that the matches will actually happen in Bangalore,
All
in
of them.
the in the Kandirva Stadium, is what we're hearing because obviously Bangalore has a good accommodation capacity. So it might happen in Bangalore is what we're hearing, although there absolutely is no sense of confirmation at all on that. But if it does, I'll be sad that I can't go out of my city. But at the same time, it's happening here, and I can take friends, I can introduce them to the sport and all of that. So there's a pros and cons that go with it happening in Bangalore. So I mean, I'm just hoping it happens. Wherever it is, it should happen. That's all that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and I think it will happen. I mean, everything's going the right way. Fingers crossed. So let's hope it continues that way and we see Kabaddi because it's been too much of a wait. You've seen 3, 4 seasons yourself. I've only had one season. That was my introduction one. But now I really want to see this season because I'll be really invested a lot more than last time. But just to finish in terms of the actual tournament. So just like other sports, I think Pro Kabaddi League seems to have a good organization behind it from the commissioner, from what you say and what have you, the way they bring in young players and the way they've made this into a truly incredible sport that's pure entertainment as well. But
Yeah.
they haven't released the fixtures, they haven't released the format with 2 months to go.
They're certainly going to take all the time it takes. There's no doubt about it because obviously there's nothing much that we know right now. We
This
have
is the
no idea of where
frustrating
it's
thing
going.
I find about Indian sports federations. There's no proper. I mean, we'll probably have the cricket fixtures for the from the ECB in November, something like that, for next season. And the football season, as you know, the fixtures come out in June for the following
Yeah.
season. India needs to get a little bit better with this. I know COVID's a factor, but still, plan for a bubble environment, but let everybody know when it's happening so we can put it in our
Yeah, I mean, we're
diaries.
all we're all waiting. I mean, I can't tell you how much I'm waiting for it. Well, just gotta wait and see when it's coming out and hope for the best. I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm so looking forward to speaking to you more about it. You've given us a brilliant insight into the auction, as always, my friend. So I can't thank you enough for that. Just whetted our appetites even more. We just have to wait now a couple of months, and I'm sure the excitement will build once again. But a fantastic auction, lots to talk about there in terms of the big names that were sold. But thank you as well. I appreciate you taking time out and talking about our second favorite, third favorite sport, or is it on par with first? I don't know. It's there anyway. But thank you, my friend. You stay safe, and no doubt I'll talk to you about another sport very soon.
Anytime, all the time, ready to talk with you, Bharat. Thank you so much again. Great to talk Kabaddi finally after a very long time and hope it starts soon. You take care too. See you.
Thank you. Bye bye.